We ready?
Let's do this.
Let's do this. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you all so much for being here today. I am Tracey, the safety lady Hawkins, and I'm so excited to be co-presenting with my dear friend, Coni Meyers. Today we wanted to talk about disaster preparedness, recovery, sustainability, and security in real estate. These areas are not only relevant, but they're essential to the real estate profession.
Tracey, thank you. It's such an honor to be here. And we've got some amazing voices that are going to help us really make the point that, well, first let me ask you a question. How many of you believe that there's opportunity in disasters and safety and in the Realtor Relief Fund? How many of you think there's an opportunity in that? Okay, good. Okay. Well, by the end of the session, I'm going to ask that question again, and we'll see how many of you have changed your mind, okay? So Tracey is on my board of directors for my nonprofit, and a safety lady for over 29 years. She's been talking about realtor safety. So she is a wealth of knowledge. If you need to know anything about the real estate professional safety, she is your gal. I have been a FEMA inspector and trainer I was there for 7 years, did over 50 disasters, trained thousands of inspectors. I always tell people I had 9 lives, and they were all because of what I'm doing today. So we're going to talk a lot today about what you can do and how you can benefit from some things that might feel a little scary. And here we have the rest of our team. Mike is a former president of the Kentucky Board of Realtors, and is also very, very involved with the Realtor Relief Fund, which is an amazing organization if you're not a part of it. And Kathleen is 2025's chairman for the Sustainability Advisory Council. And we've known each other for a little bit now. So thank you so much for all of you for coming. What we're all going to do is we're each going to take a few minutes to kind of talk about the different aspects of the environment and disasters and relief and sustainability. And then we're going to have a discussion. So, Tracey, you want to go first?
Yes. What I'm going to talk about today is CPTED. Has anyone heard of that concept? Crime prevention through environmental practices? Okay, that's what I'm talking about today. My job is to first define what CPTED means, and that's basically using the environment to create a safer or more secure either workplace or home. I'm going to talk to you about how to use that when you're working with your consumers, the buyers or the sellers. I'm going to show you how to add value to the conversation. Right now, you all have been beat over the head with the term, show your value. Am I right or wrong? So you have to create a value proposition. I happen to host the country's only real estate safety podcast. It's Drive with NAR, the safety series. And I want to make sure that you understand that my theme is to teach you how to lead with safety. I'm a former real estate agent, and I've been in the safety business, like Coni said, for over 29 years. So every training class that I have, I am saying, here's number 1, how to be safe. And number 2, here's how to lead with safety, how to protect the consumer. That's how you're going to stand out from the other 1.5 million realtors out there. So I'm teaching you how to add safety to the equation. So CPTED is a concept of using the environment to create a place that's burglar-proof and that criminals think twice before they enter. Okay, here's the first concept, natural surveillance. So that means light it up. My house is the one in the neighborhood that has a coach light, porch light, and the floodlights, and that's just up front. In the back, I have floodlights over my deck. If a criminal is looking for a house to rob or burglarize, which house do you think they're going to pick? My house with all the bright lights, or my neighbor's houses that are completely dark? Which one? The dark one. And in my mind, it's like, why won't my neighbors turn their light on? Someone said, because yours are bright enough. But if a criminal's driving down the street and they're looking for a house, they're not going to pick mine because they think that they're on stage. The minute they step in my driveway, I can look out of my window and see them, my neighbors can see them, people driving down the street can see them. So more than likely, my house will not be chosen. That's why you need to have that conversation with the sellers during your listing appointment. So the listing appointment is not just about how much money you can get in your marketing plans. Here's how we can keep your house safe while it's on the market. Another one is natural access control. If you've noticed a landscaping where you have winding curves and you have the flowers lining the sidewalk, that shows you the direction to walk to get to it. So that means that you understand that that's how you're directing traffic. So bottom line, make sure your shrubbery and your landscaping is well maintained and that it leads to the front door. Territorial reinforcement. Do you remember seeing those signs that says beware dog on site? Something along those lines. So you're saying this is my territory. This is my home, do not enter here. So landscaping does that as well as physical boundaries. And then maintenance and management. Has anyone here heard of land scams? Land scams. Is that a big deal where you are? It's almost everywhere. One of the number one factors for a land scam is a deserted house, an empty house, or it could be an abandoned lot or an empty lot. So what is one thing, if you have clients that have a lot, what is one thing that you can do to tell your clients how to keep that lot from looking like it's abandoned? One thing you can do. Mow it. Keep it mowed, keep it maintained, because if it looks abandoned, then criminals will say, I'm going to latch on to that. What about a house, an empty house that your clients just have listed, but they're not living there? What can you do to make it look anti-burglary proof? Lights, right. And so with all the smart technology right now, I live in Kansas City right now, from my phone, I can turn my lights off and on. I can open and close my blinds. So talk to them about using smart home features in order to make their home look occupied, because that's going to help deter burglary. Okay, so let's talk about showing your value at using CPTED principles. You're going to educate the client on the safety features, what we just talked about. During your listing presentation, you're going to talk to your sellers or potential sellers about those. Even during the buyer consultation, and we're going to talk about that. Your theme is safety and security. 100% of the people, every adult on the face of the earth is concerned about their personal safety, the security of their home, protection of their family, and their possessions, right? Every adult's concerned about it. So every conversation you have will be about keeping their home and their family safe. So let's talk about that seller listing presentation. I used to ask the question, hey agents, what do you do to stand out on your seller listing presentation? They probably interviewed 2 or 3 other agents. What are you doing differently? I had an agent, she said, I'm not telling everyone what I do. So I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to talk about the CPTED principles we just talked about. You're going to explain to them that they need lighting, automated lighting. You're going to talk about keeping the landscape updated and maintained. You're going to talk about signage, anything to keep their house safe and secure. And this is also where you walk through the house and tell them to get rid of the personal pictures and get jewelry out of jewelry boxes, medicine out of medicine cabinets. You're telling them how to keep their home secure while it's on the market, whether they live there or not. And you're going to tell them how these kind of improvements and steps will help attract buyers. So you're talking directly about their bottom line. So let's talk about buyers. When you have your buyer consultation, you guys remember there was a little thing that happened on August 17th, something about a settlement, right? And then some places you do not always have to have your buyer agreement. And so those of you who've been doing it, you're fine. Those of you who had to start doing it, your hair was on fire. It's like, how do we get the buyer to sign this agreement? Lead with safety. So here's what you're doing. On your buy, when it's time to meet your buyer, you're saying we're going to have a safety consultation. And we're going to talk about ways to do business together. So you're meeting them. You're saying, I'm going to talk to you about how to pick a house that is secure. You're going to talk about the principles that I mentioned. You're saying we're going to make sure the house follows CPTED principles, that it's maintained, that it's well lit. You're going to talk to them about that. You're also going to talk to them about wire fraud, how to prevent wire fraud while they're in this process, since criminals are coming for them. You're talking to them about ways to get through the process in a safe manner. So that's what you're doing. And by the way, this buyer agreement will outline how we're going to do business together. So you have a buyer consultation that is now based in safety. Who is going to say no to that? You're going to educate the buyers to look for homes that follow these principles. You're going to emphasize how this reduces crime. You're going to talk about the community around it. You will also highlight the security features. If there's a house that follows CPTED principles, you're saying this house has security features. You know, look, notice the landscaping is cut short so that there's no hiding place for criminals. You're going to say, notice the lighting, notice the smart home features. So you are using that to sell. If you have an office, the same principles apply. you're going to talk, if you're a broker, manager, or owner, you need to apply these exact same principles in your office so that you can burglar-proof your office as well. So you're going to create a safe work environment, and if your employees know that you care about their safety, not just personally, but of their workplace, then that's going to go far. My theme, again, is to lead with safety, adapt CPTED principles. You're going to get a handout from me, and it's a checklist just basically outlining what I said, so that when you go on your next seller listing presentation or your buyer consultation, follow the checklist so that you can make sure you're adding safety to the conversation. And don't forget, every single adult is concerned about safety. If you're the one who is talking to them about keeping themselves and their family safe during the real estate transaction, you stand out.
Does anybody know where this is? This is Lahaina. Where? Lahaina. So if you were the real estate agent, which one of these houses would you like to be listing? Okay, this house, okay, so the people it's the Dudleys that own this home. And they put a steel, this is actually a National Historical Building, and they put a steel roof on it, not because they were worried about fires, but because they were worried about the salt air. They put 30 feet of rock out from around the house, not because they were worried about fires, but because they were worried about termites. The house fortunately had redwood already, and so it was already a fire preventative measure. And when the fire was happening, the fire embers were coming over the house, they were falling onto the roof, they were falling onto the ground, and on all the other areas, the house is burned. So this is exactly why you have an opportunity to create an environment where people understand what the risk factors are. I love this. So this quote is from Henry David Thoreau from the mid-1800s. What is the use to have a house if you don't have a tolerable planet to put it on? There are 5 areas that are being affected in the real estate industry because of climate change. First of all, there's more frequent disasters. Insurance, obviously all of you have probably had some aspect of insurance being bothered, and mortgages, and increased regulations. All those things are affecting how you do your job. But again, there's opportunity in all of this. I put up this slide. I was a FEMA inspector for 7 years, did over 50 disasters and trained thousands of inspectors. I didn't put this up there to talk about me. I was physically addicted to the job, and I would come home from after a disaster and I'd turn on the TV to see where I was going to go next. Now, if I was a FEMA inspector, I'd say, okay, do I want to go to Hawaii? Do I want to go to Florida? Do I want to go to the hills above Asheville? Do I want to go to the Midwest or the fires in the West Coast? I could pick and choose what disaster. That's how much it has increased over the years. This is from NOAA, and they track all the billion-dollar disasters or greater. And it takes a few years for the final numbers to come about. Like Lahaina, for example, they've just started now giving out residential building permits. There's like maybe a handful that's been done. That's how far behind we really are. So I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but 2023, there were 28 events at $95 billion, 95.1, and that was just the beginning. If you look at 2022, there were 18 events, so 18 versus 28. $177.6 billion of our money, our tax dollar monies, for billion-dollar disasters or greater is what we're spending. This is not counting all the ones that are under. Right now, there's been 24 events. This was as of 10/31. And I went in and corrected it in the speaker's thing, but obviously it didn't say that's 10/31. So we have no idea what the totals are going to be yet. FEMA has declared as of 11/5, 170 disasters so far. That's a presidentially declared disaster. So do you think there's opportunity here? Okay, let's talk about some real numbers that'll affect your business. First of all, the last 5 years, it's been frequency, intensity, and cost. How many of you have noticed that in your own area? Right? I mean, I'm in Las Vegas. We had 10 days of 118, 120 degrees. Before that, the highest day on record since 1931 was 117. It happened 5 times. So 1 in 4 homes right now are considered too high of risk to be insured. 3.3 million people in 2022 were displaced, and 2023 it was actually 3.5. 99% of all counties now have flooding. 40% of the population has experienced disasters, and it's actually 45% now for 2023. Fires, 2022 was 7.5. That was actually down because we had a lot of rain that year. It was down from 10 million acres. Drought was the worst we'd had in 1,200 years, and it went everywhere from California to Maine, and from Oregon to Florida. In 2023, the first wildfire was in the Everglades, a swamp. 2023, there were 14 atmospheric rivers. For those of you that don't know what that is, that's a sideways river, or water. And an average one dumps more water than the Mississippi dumps into the Gulf of Mexico. If it's a serious atmospheric river, it can be 15 times that. So just imagine, and we used to not even how to hear of these things. They were a rarity. Tornadoes, and again, this number has really been updated. So 2023, there were 1,378, and as of October 31st, I apologize, the number is incorrect, it was 1,515 as of the end of October, and there's been some more since then. Power outages have doubled, and this is an area that I hate talking about, but I think it's important. So in 2023, there were 656 incidents of mass shootings. There were 51 school shootings. Again, these numbers didn't save, so I apologize. There have been, as of November or October, there were over 1,000 people injured, and there were out of 482 incidents. And school shootings, there's been 82 this year. So, do you see there might be some opportunity in there for you to be a community leader and to take a stand and say, this is how I can help my community? One of the first things you can do is take the CERT program in your community. It's free, and it talks about the risk factors in your area. I highly recommend that. What's the answer to all of that? The answer is to become more sustainable. How to prevent that? And there's a lot of controversy. I'm just going to put this out on the table because it's the elephant in the room. Climate change, whether you believe that it's real or whether you believe that it's not, it really doesn't matter because you're paying the bill. That's whether we agree with it or not agree with it. Our insurance premiums are going up. Our taxpayers are paying the money that's going out. And that is, how can we counteract that? We can become more sustainable. And there's a new law that came out last year called the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm not going to go into the details. It is in your handout that I provided you. It has all the details about the inflation, and then Kathy's going to talk about it some more. There's cash rebates and tax credits that improve insulation, moisture management, heating and cooling systems, ventilation, appliances, solar and wind, and just overall performance. How many of you have already looked into the Inflation Reduction Act? That table over there for sure. Okay, this is a huge benefit for you. Because guess what? The higher the performance of the home, the more it's worth. What does that mean to you? These are also some of the additional benefits that come from the Inflation Reduction Act. There's been 462,400 installation jobs created. There's been 80,000 manufacturing jobs, and there's been 800,000 indirect or induced jobs. They've also improved the health indoors and as well as outdoors. Those are all areas that the Inflation Reduction Act is helping. What are the benefits to the consumers? First of all, they have lower bills, they reduce the emissions, and they increase home value. So is there maybe an opportunity there for you?
Good afternoon. Now that Coni and Tracey have frightened you with all of the aspects of security and disasters, I just want to ask, is anyone in this room familiar with NAR Sustainability Advisory Group? Please raise your hand. Yes. Okay, I am lucky enough to be serving as the 2025 SAG chairman. So one of the things that we're not going to read all the slides, but I just want to highlight the first paragraph there. Our Sustainability Advisory Group exists to evaluate, monitor, and analyze then implement means and methods for integrating sustainability, and I will add resiliency, into all aspects of residential and commercial real estate. Why might that be important? As Tracey mentioned, we had a little change August 17th. We think that it's become even more important that we create a realtor's value statement. If you understand sustainability and you understand resiliency and the importance of that to your business, you will then understand how important and urgent it is for our consumers and our communities. So being able to communicate that, one of our purposes is to advise leadership and our associations on promoting sustainability and resiliency throughout the industry. We have, I think, Coni mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, better known as the IRA. One of the things that our Sustainability Advisory Group concentrated on this last year was creating a white paper and a deep dive into how the Inflation Reduction Act could benefit not only consumers, but how do we need to get the realtor involved in the process. We developed a letter to send to all of your government affairs directors, local and state, to help them work with the state energy offices to get those funds out to consumers, to help the realtors be involved in being a source for those resources, where to go, how do we help our consumers, our clients, our communities benefit from those rebates and those tax credits. So it was really important for us to do that research, get it out to you, and get it out to our local associations. Another important aspect that we've worked on now for 2 years and has come to fruition this year is the toolkit that's available at NAR.realtor for you to help your local and state associations create sustainability task forces or work groups, perhaps committees. It allows them to promote sustainability and resiliency. They can examine their own association headquarters, perhaps. How are they saving money? How are they energy efficient? So please, when you get a chance, and there will be some other QR codes in here that you can scan, you can go right to that toolkit, go to your association leaders, help them understand the importance of sustainability and resiliency. Another important aspect of our advisory group is to do deep research into natural disasters, recovery from them, and in some cases, building to preempt disastrous effects on the buildings. So our 2023 research case was very, very interesting. It was on the disaster in Paradise, California. You'll see a QR code and you can take a look at all of the research. But it studied the impact of the 2018 Camp Fire on the community of Paradise, California, which was essentially destroyed. It looked at the power grid infrastructure and how it impacts. It looked at the preparedness of the community. And it looked at the rebuilding efforts. It focused on the building codes, resilience building, and property maintenance. And it also looked at how it impacted our members. How could they transact their profession and business in a community that essentially was destroyed? So, very important to take a look at this. We have currently just introduced the 2024 research case studies. We call it the Tale of Two Towns, and I urge you to take a look at this. It is very interesting. 95% of the community of Greensburg, Kansas was leveled after a tornado struck in 2007. Imagine that, 95%. So following this, they made a decision to build back to be more sustainable and more resilient. It's a really great study on the follow-up to a disaster. As an alternative, we looked at Babcock Ranch, Florida. This community was actually built from the ground up, starting with infrastructure, right onto the buildings themselves. And it was to acknowledge the increasing frequency of hurricanes, the damage from them, and in hopes of resisting that damage and not require frequent rebuilding or displacement of the members and the population there. So great opportunity from our SAG to take a look at how that resilient building aspect can really benefit our client in the long run. Coni talked about the IRA. I'll just highlight 3 things. $9 billion to change the existing home landscape. As Coni showed in more detail, there are tax credits, there are incentives, there's a potential for us as realtors to work with the state energy offices again to help us be the source for our clients and our communities and how to use these funds. It's a great business opportunity for realtors, and again, we want to build the value of the realtor. So I thank you for your time, and now I'm going to introduce you to Mike, who is going to give us a true story of disaster.
Thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. This year I am the chair of fundraising, the annual campaign committee of 120-member committee from all 50 states and territories that raises funds to support the Growth and Relief Foundation. Growth and Relief Foundation has been around a long time. We don't use the word natural disasters because we support all disasters, and we have supported man-made. The first disaster that we came out of was, of course, the World Trade Center in 2001, when Richard Mendenhall and others formed the Growth and Relief Foundation. Up until the 20th anniversary of 2021, Growth and Relief Foundation was a reactive organization that raised around $300,000 or $400,000 a year to help with disaster relief after a disaster had occurred. Because we had a huge fundraising effort in 2021, we now are able to be proactive in the way we respond to disasters. And I was directly involved in this. I was the president of the Kentucky Realtors in 2022. We actually, in the month before I took over as president, we actually had a historic tornado that ran from Arkansas all the way through Tennessee, Kentucky, into Indiana. And a number of communities in Kentucky were the downtown area of these cities were actually just totally wiped out by these tornadoes. We also had some ancillary tornadoes in the city of Bowling Green, was hit pretty heavy. With that, actually, Elizabeth Monarch was here, who was the president who followed me, and she had a family that was impacted by that. So, Realtors Relief Foundation was able to step in and help us to the tune of a grant of $1.5 million for tornadoes. So we have raised $60 million, or have actually given $60 million in support since the inception of Realtors Relief Foundation. We've helped, actually that number is over 24,000 now. The Helene and Milton numbers are not completely in yet, but we know that we're in the 24,000 family range that we have helped since the inception of Realtors Relief Foundation. And we're unique among charities for a number of reasons. Most importantly, because 100% of the dollars that we raise go to support families. Now, I don't know if you know any other charities that are able to do that. We do it because NAR picks up the expenses for that. If you ran into race this morning, the profit from that, and we had sponsors that paid for a lot of things, NAR paid for a lot of things, but the profit from that race this morning will go to Realtors Relief Foundation. So, disasters, you've already heard, and if you wondered why the title of this presentation is the long title that it is, and there's so many different subjects in it, these things are all interrelated. And the fact of the matter is, whatever reason it is, disasters are at an all-time high. If you look back at 2021, we supported 9 disasters. In 2022, we supported 15. 25 last. But this year, we're at 30, and we're not done. Even as we're speaking here, there is snow falling in Colorado at record amounts. I want to say Palo Verde, California, I believe they submitted a request for a mudslide earlier this week for funding. So we're supporting disasters at an extremely high level because there are more disasters, because we've done a better job of getting the word out, because we have trained people on how to respond to the disasters, and because we are able to respond to those disasters because we're proactive in our fundraising. This map just gives you an idea of the communities that have been impacted this year by the various disasters that we have supported. It's all across the country. 30 relief efforts, 7,800 families that we've assisted this year, and that number is probably way low. We're actually at $14.8 million that we've given out this year. 20 different states that have received funding from us. So on the fundraising side, our goal this year was to raise $4.25 million. Of course, we didn't know when we set that fundraising goal that we were going to give out $14.8 million. But our fundraising goal for the year was 4.25. We're actually approaching 4.3 million right now, so we have exceeded our goal. We set some new goals this year. We wanted to have more of our local boards be participating, so we set a goal of having a third of our boards participate, and we're getting close to that goal right now. We want all of our states to be partners. We're at that number now, 48 right now, of the states that are partners with us. On the individual side, this is an area that we really need to improve on because a lot of our members have not bought into the importance of Realtors Relief Foundation. Our goal this year was 6,000 to be participants. That number right now is in the 5,000 range. So we're approaching the 6,000. We may make it this week. The big thing, though, the good news about it is the average size of the gift is $146. So that's really good news for us. Now, I want to take just a minute and talk about the other side of Realtors Relief Foundation, because you always hear about the fundraising side of it. The other side of it is very, very important, because if you have a disaster in your area, and the president or your governor or your county executive, whoever that is, declares that area to be a disaster, then you are eligible to come to us and ask for a grant. And that's when the work begins. The grant is pretty easy to obtain. It's easy to fill that out. You have to do an estimate of how many families are impacted and what you think the average grant should be, based on what their mortgage is or rents or whatever for that particular area. That's pretty easy to do. Once you get the grant, though, you have got to go out, and I say you because I should say we realtors go out to our communities. We find those families that are displaced, or they might be living in a hotel, they might be living in a tent, as they are right now in Western North Carolina. And we help them fill out an application, prove that they have a loss. And that sometimes is very difficult because if your house is gone, chances are all your records are gone. And sometimes people find this a very daunting task. In Kentucky, the first time we went through it with the tornadoes, it was very, very difficult to do. But when we did it the second time, we had a guy came on board the staff who had the ability to develop an app, and we did it right on our phone. That app has now been ported out to a number of states. And if you'd like to find out how that worked, let me know after this conference, or after this session, and I'll tell you about it. But basically, you can fill out the application on the phone. You can take pictures of documentation like a mortgage or lease or whatever, and you can document the loss by simply taking pictures of where your house should be or whatever. And but I cannot tell you how difficult that is to do, and you need to be prepared for that. And you really need to prepare for that before the disaster and know how that you're going to do it. The other thing is, I would tell you that you need to build a disaster plan, and the first entry into that plan is to call Patty Garcia, because Patty is the person at NAR who helps you fill out that grant application, and she is wonderful. I was kind of hoping she would stick her head in here and I would introduce you to you. But she is an awesome person to know, and that's the starting point for it. And so you say, gosh, this is a lot of work. Why do we want to do this? Well, realtors do a lot more than help people buy or sell houses, right? We're involved in our community. There's no other organization that has the structure that we have that goes down to the homeowner in the community. So we're the right group of people to do it, but we also reap the benefit, because there's nothing like taking a check and giving it to somebody that you sold a house to a couple of years ago, or that you helped with something, some real estate transaction, and hand them a check. And when you listen to those stories, you will never in your life experience anything more emotional than listening to somebody who's lost their house, and you've given them some money to allow them to recover. I'll take a second to tell one quick story. Down in Whitesburg, Kentucky, we were presenting checks, and I was talking to a veteran who had retired from the military. He had bought some land up in the mountains, way above the flood zone, and he built a house. And like a lot of people, he didn't have insurance because he paid for his house in 14. It wasn't required, so he didn't have insurance. So he got the rains that came down in eastern Kentucky. He got a mudslide. His house had 4 feet of mud. So he cleaned out the mud, removed all the drywall from the house, which is what you have to do when you had a flood like that. And he was living in that house, getting ready to go into a winter with no insulation and no drywall. We were able to give him a check for $1,500. He went to Lowe's, bought a truckload of drywall, and drywalled his house. And that man cried when I gave him that check. And that is a powerful thing. I will tell you that he will never forget what retrofit did. So, thank you.
And then, Connie, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I want to jump in really quickly. You mentioned real estate agents and what they can and can't do. Lee Brown is one real estate agent who is making a difference. She has single-handedly led the effort to raise over, is it $300,000? And can you talk a little bit?
$300,000, and Lee has, if you don't know Lee, I mean, she's kind of a legend with real estate, but she very quickly with the North Carolina Helene disaster began to organize relief efforts there. She's received money from all over the country, and she has taken, I know, a truckload of generators and a truckload of chainsaws and food, water, everything. She's been kind of a single point person to coordinate the relief efforts. And I can't tell you, she's a longtime member of the foundation, of the Relief Foundation board. She is not at this conference this week because she's engaged with helping in Western North Carolina. And if you don't know, there are people down there who are going to go through the winter in tents. There are people there who will not have electricity for 6 months or so. You say, why do you need generators? Those people will need fuel to keep those generators going during the winter, a way to provide heat for them. And Lee is doing yeoman's work in coordinating all that effort.
Things like mailboxes. She's creating mailboxes and small, is it storage or small residences, places for, so leesells.com, S-E-L-S. She's doing amazing work. Okay.
I think that you just brought up a really important point, because I asked earlier whether or not you believe that disasters and what we're going to be talking about today created opportunity. So if I am in an area where Lee is working, where she's a real estate agent, and she has done all this for the community, who are you going to use as your real estate agent? And each and every one of you and real estate agents can make a difference in your communities by becoming a community leader, standing out when it comes to prevention. What my nonprofit has done, and this is just an example, you could take it and use it. We decided we want to work with kids. So we created Kits for Kids, because the one thing we all can agree on is we want to protect our kids, right? And 76% of parents are now worried about their kids' anxiety, fear, and depression. And 67% of kids are worried about their futures. So this is a perfect way. Whatever your passion is in your community, maybe it's not kids, maybe it's animals, but having something where you're out there talking about how to prevent disasters, what is the mitigation you can do, get to know your CERT program, get to know your emergency planning people, and take information out to your community. Maybe you take it to senior citizens because they have special needs. By the way, one of the things that I always tell people, everybody knows they're supposed to have an emergency kit, right? Well, you need to have an emergency kit for the house. You need to have one for every individual, every kid, every senior citizen that's with you. They need to have an emergency kit. You need to have, what's crazy is we all pretty much have an emergency kit in our cars. But we don't think about the humans and whether they're at work or, so think about in your planning where you need to have those emergency kits. And then truly take a look, and I'll let Kathy address this a little bit. Take a look at what you can do. This IRA program is an incredible opportunity to not just make a difference in your community and to help with the prevention, but to also really change what this world looks like.
You know, I am so happy I got up and ran this morning for the RRF, because I don't think there was a better use of my time this morning or my entry than what you just talked about, Mike. Realtors are very giving people. We are, I think, unequal in the way we give back to our communities and we give back to our clients. So, hearing the story about Lee, everything that the RRF is doing, I think is just absolutely inspirational. I just want to mention a little bit about, I mentioned the research studies that we did. So Babcock Ranch in Florida was built from the ground up for sustainable and resilient resources, as well as from infrastructure all the way up to their buildings. They have been tested this year, as we know, with some of the hurricanes. So it's a very interesting study. If you have time to click on that QR code, go on to the website at nar.realtor, take a look at that. Maybe there's something you can do as a realtor to help your clients when they want to think about utilizing some of those IRA funds. What a great opportunity for you to help them. You're a resource for them. And NAR walks the walk. NAR has a LEEDs high-performance building in our office in Washington, D.C. We knew from square one it was very important to utilize those resilient features, and we are a shining example of the use of that. We have continued to upgrade that building to stay in touch with the times. We've also gone through a reboot at the Chicago building. We are doing everything that we can do to try to be sustainable and resilient. The idea of the toolkit to help your local association, there are a lot of different things you can do to analyze your association. Are they prepared? Is our building prepared? Are they prepared to help you as a realtor? How can you as a realtor then help your community? So I just think great opportunities for us, and it's in our DNA to be a helpful resource to our consumers.
I would like to add one thing to that. There's an organization, you may have heard of it, called Pearl Certifications. And you can go onto their website and you can actually see for your clients and for yourself how much money you might be able to get from the IRA program. And the app is greendoor.app, I believe it is, or Green Door. Just Google Pearl Certification and you'll find it. But you can go in and check out what is available for a particular client or for yourself. I did my home, and even though I have some solar and I have some things that I've done already, I qualified for over $30,000. So it's worth checking out, and Pearl they have different levels of certification for home. And the first level, I think it's silver, is it silver, I believe, is the first level, or the second level rather. And then the higher the performance the home, the more requirements there are. But check it out for your own home. And really the more you're sustainable your home is, the more valuable it's going to be. Let's face it, the more commission you're going to make.
Oh, okay, so let's talk principles. Let's talk actual principles that you all can start incorporating today in your real estate business. I want to talk about two of the CPTED principles that I covered earlier. I'm going to do kind of a deep dive, and I'm looking at the clock, and I know we have limited time, but my goal is that you walk away with actual principles that you can start using today. We talked about lighting. Now that is something that, a conversation that you need to have with the sellers. So when you tell them the importance of having lighting, you need to make sure they understand. I would ask the question, let me ask you all, how many of you all leave your lights on at night? Okay, and you understand that crime prevention officers tell you that your house, if it's lit up, that there's less likelihood that you're going to be burglarized. So for those of you who didn't raise your hand, anyone want to share why you might not leave your lights on? Yes.
I live in North Carolina, and a 12-gauge shotgun and a German.
Okay, understood. Thank you for sharing that. Some people say because I don't want my electric bill to be higher than normal. It costs less than $65 a year if you have your lights on at night. So the conversation that you're having with your seller during your presentation is that the lights need to be on at night. I had a seller who said, I'll just leave my lights on all the time, that way I don't have to worry about turning them off. Can anyone tell me the problem with a porch light on during the daytime? What does that say?
Nobody's home.
Exactly. No one's home, burglarize me. This is a conversation you're having with the sellers. Do not leave your lights on 24/7. Invest in something like a motion detector, motion light, or a dusk to dawn adapter. All of my lights come on and I don't have to flip a switch. So you're having the conversation with the seller, go to the hardware store, buy a dusk to dawn adapter, screw it in the light fixture, put the light bulb in, your lights go off when it's dark, when it's light, and they come on when it's dark, automatically doing that. So you're having that conversation with them. Signage. This is another one. I wrote an article for Realtor magazine about dangerous animals, and there was a conversation about putting up a sign saying warning vicious dog. Can anyone see a slight problem with warning that there's a vicious dog on the property? It starts with an L and ends with a liability, right? So even NAR's attorney said that might not be a good idea. So if your sellers are putting warning, I have a dangerous dog, and the dog does something, that means they knew the dog was dangerous, right? So the better choice is to advise your sellers to put up a camera surveillance sign. You are being watched, something to let them know that you're, whether or not you have a camera. So tell the sellers, if you have a camera, you need to do this legally anyway. Let them know. And if they don't have a camera, do it anyway. Criminals think twice before they do something in front of a camera. Think about how you are in a store when you know a camera's on, in the elevator, anywhere. So put up signage stating the fact that there is a camera, and just doing that will lower the opportunity to be burglarized. So those are two things you can do today. And it also works with the buyers. You're telling the buyers to look for a house that has lighting, automatic lighting, because it's more secure. You're telling buyers to look for a house that has a built-in, maybe smart cameras. So those are conversations you can start having immediately and using the environment in order to be safe. Okay, Connie?
I would like to, Mike, you talked a lot about the Realtor Relief Fund, and I talk about it all the time in my training that I do. If people have not been involved with Realtor Relief Fund, you've given a great reason about why they should. But in your own personal experience, because you had, what was it like for you as a realtor when you were out there helping people? What was that like?
Well, I went to Bowling Green, which is one of the towns that were affected by we actually, before our summer meeting, the summer that we had the tornadoes, a number of us went and helped. There were actually some people who very generously gave of their time and money to help other people, but their houses were seriously impacted. And I know we ripped the vinyl siding off of a house and replaced it for one of those volunteers. There is nothing more rewarding, I think, than being able to help somebody else and give back. And people remember that. They remember it. If you went to the breakfast the other day, the video that was shown at the start of the breakfast, a good part of that was done in Kentucky after the tornadoes and the floods that we had in 2022, which was a very disastrous year. But it's rewarding. Connie pointed out very well that there is a financial incentive for you to be involved in this, because people are going to remember you when you come and help and all. But there's a personal reward that comes from being a part of something bigger than you and helping people to recover.
And in our nonprofit, we call it doing well by doing good. And it's so true. You're a real estate agent of what, 45 years? Long time. So as with this new Inflation Reduction Act, how do you see your business being affected with this?
Well, hopefully, number one, I think we as realtors need to be aware of the high performance features as we place values on homes. So I look at that as something that is critical to our industry. We need to be able to evaluate and help our clients evaluate perhaps a home next door to one that doesn't have use and so forth from the IRA, hasn't upgraded their HVAC, hasn't taken advantage of that. There is a monetary value to our clients. It's our obligation to understand that monetary value. It's our obligation to be able to evaluate it and monetize it for our clients. So I think that's critical. I don't know if all of you know this, but if you have the chance to list a high performance home, you're going through the transaction. It comes time for that appraiser to visit. Did you know that if you happen to be in the presence of an appraiser who is not certified to appraise a high-performance property and therefore may not be able to provide the value that is needed for the loan, you can ask, or your client or buyer, as the case may be, for an appraiser who's educated and certified in dealing with high-performance homes. And it's critical. There are actually high-performance loans out there, green loans. You need to be, again, the source to help them find that source that will best enable them to purchase that property. And lastly, I'll say, one of the things that you'll hear discussed all the time in our sustainability advisory group is, are we telling our clients what the total cost of ownership is? It might be important to know that this property at 123 Main Street is a high-performance home. What are their energy bills? How does that impact them? What are the insurance costs if, for instance, it's a home that has been built to resilient standards following a disaster? So those are things, you may not have that specific information, but you can be the resource for them to get to the right source.
And I would say, we all know that insurance costs are going up.
Yes.
And after the aftermath of Helene and Milton, they're going to go up a lot. Just
And a
in
lot
my
of uninsured.
In the last year, every house in my neighborhood has had a new roof put on. Insurance companies are starting to say that if a roof is half of its life, that they don't want to insure it. So I'd say if you have a sustainable home, you have an argument to go to your insurance company and get a reduced rate on your insurance. That would be a big point of that.
Well, and the insurance that's out there now, there's a lot of companies, depending on what state you're in, that have left those states, like Florida and Louisiana and California and some of those areas. And the thing of it is, the fair insurance program, every state has a fair insurance program. The problem is that it doesn't insure like a homeowner's does. I think the maximum is only $250,000 replacement cost. I don't care where you are. Is that going to cover everything? So that's very critically important to understand that. I think my point that I would really love to get across is the fact that every single thing that we've talked about here is an opportunity for you to not just make more money. It's not about that, but it's truly about making a difference in your life. And as a FEMA inspector, like I said earlier, I was physically addicted to the job. I would literally come home, the day after I get home, I'd get sick, and then I'd turn on the TV, and I'd start be looking around like, okay, where am I going next? Where am I going next? And truly today, and think about what it's costing us to make that happen. What it's costing taxpayers to make that happen. What it's costing us in insurability. You might be in an area where you didn't used to be in a floodplain and now you are because of the new regulations. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are looking at what they're going to do when it comes to climate change. If they're going to start putting a surcharge or something along those natures on loans in these areas that there might be some risk. So all of this, the number one industry that's being affected is yours. So, and then I want to lighten it up. I'm kind of the heavy hitter here. After being a FEMA inspector and you see it, you understand how, and my love is with, I'm a great-grandmother, great-grandmother, and I have an 8-year-old great-grandson, and I want to know for certain that he's going to be okay and he's going to live in a world. So when we created the Kits for Kids program, it's a kit that goes in, it's a safety kit that goes in the bottom of the kid's everyday backpack. So it goes to school and playground and all that. And my boyfriend is a broker. And he said to me, he says, because I have a book that also is a reference guide on what to do. And he said, Coni, he says, if I'm going out there and I'm going to list a property, whenever I go out there, there's a whole bunch of other proposals that I'm competing with. He says, if I walk in with your book and I say, here is something that's going to protect you and your family and your home, And by the way, here are kits for your kids, safety. What have I done? I've changed the conversation. Now, I'm not saying you need to use that idea, but any idea that you can come up with that is going to set you apart and let people know that you truly care about their well-being. And it's not just about, you totally change the conversation about commission at that point in time. Because they're saying, oh, this person really does care about me, and they're not gonna cut commission, or they're not gonna do this, and they're not gonna do that. So my recommendation and my heartfelt belief is that you find whatever is in your heart to make a difference, to make it more sustainable, to make it more, to do the mitigation. The risk factors can be mitigated to reduce the loss, right? So being able to help your clients, helping them with the insurance needs, and pointing out to them that, hey, you know, if you do this, the insurance companies have incentives that if you do certain things, they'll give you a discount. And they're doing more and more of that. So I implore you to take all of this information and incorporate it into your business, because the money comes when you do the work, right? When you show up. And when you show up with heart, that's when the clients flow. So that's off my soapbox now.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
We should tell, that next slide, Connie, if you go back to that, we should tell you that these handouts are available online. If you scan these QR codes, or you'll get them with the thing. There's one thing on the RRF handout that's called Speed to the Need. We are developing a disaster plan. It's in the final stages now that we're going to give out to you, so that you know what to do in those early days after a disaster. You want to get yourself set up to be ready for the realtor's relief.
That's a good point. I forgot to mention. Every single one of you are the first responders. Not the EMTs, not the fire department, not FEMA, not anybody else. You are the first responders, which is why the CERT program is so important.
And then while we wait for your question, can you look at the tablets?
I tried to look and it's black.
Oh,
So if you put a
okay.
question in, you're going to have to ask it live. Sorry.
And that's all set up for the microphone.
There you
Okay, so all of these things that you covered are great for us as realtors to try to implement and make that change. The issue that I notice is that we're dealing with municipal and government infrastructure that is failing and is not resilient. From the levees in Katrina, to the dams in western North Carolina, to the failed fire alarm settings in Hawaii. How can any of us do anything to affect change in building resilient communities where local municipalities and governments do not have correct stormwater management plans? They do not have adequate infrastructure, and our communities are not investing in themselves. The insurance expenses are falling on the backs of our homeowners and housing affordability when we have infrastructure that is not creating those communities. What can we do to affect change there?
That's an excellent question. I'll give you my 2 cents worth. You all have a realtor association. You all have other realtors in your neighborhood and in your communities. Get involved at the community level. Get involved and have your voice be heard. And reach out to the states, reach out to NAR, reach out to the other nonprofits in your area,